You're listening to the all-new KBLU radio network. That's the Blue Raven Network. Often duplicated, but never replicated. You're listening to the all-new KBLU radio network. That's the Blue Raven Network.
Often duplicated, never replicated. You're listening to the all-new KBLU radio network, Blue Raven Network.
The world of 1916 was complex, or the world of 1945 was complex. The world of 2016 is intensely complex. You'll be dealing with terrorists. You'll be dealing with hybrid armies. You'll be dealing with little green men. You're going to be dealing with tribes. You'll be dealing with national leaders and local leaders. You'll be dealing with politics and economics. You'll be dealing with direct fire and indirect fire. And you're going to be dealing with it all. And it's all going to be dealt with simultaneously.
I'm Scott Hensler. Well, you know, we had the inaugural today. We had Trump taking office. We've got Obama leaving. We've got riots. We've got all kinds of issues and problems, which is par for the course since the division of America and the world continues as planned by the New World Order. So as Trump takes office, CNN has a professor who's already predicting an impeachment of Trump. Now that's interesting, CNN. And of course the opposition's those of Fox News, which nothing more than left-right paradigm. They're both on the same team, both CNN and Fox, and Gematria is indicating 32 and 666 and all the other things, whether it's esoteric, exoteric, whatever they're trying to do, nothing good comes of it. Now, Trump protesters being maced and held back at bay, holding signs saying hell begins at noon on 1/20/27, failed to understand that hell has been in the White House for a very long time. Came to breakfast 8 years ago. Now, it was simply a passing of the torch from the Bushes, from the Clintons to Bush Sr., all the way back. Everyone that has been in office has been related to each other in some way, same bloodline, Masons, all the connections, everything leading back to the Rothschilds, Bilderbergers, everyone involved is nothing more than a puppet, a puppeteer. Now, the First Lady this time is actually a woman. Okay, it's good to have a woman in there as a First Lady. The last 8 years has been a transsexual, transvestite, has been this thing that has been perpetrating itself as a woman. Now, the question is whether the First Lady is human or not. But, you know, after 8 years of that thing that's been in there, whatever species the First Lady is of, well, the fact that it's female, I guess, is a step forward. So, again, I guess regardless of the situations, we have made some headroom. Now, Obama, President clone, whichever one he was leaving, was also hand in hand with the tranny. Well, goodbye and good riddance, and don't let the White House, you know what, hit you in the know what. But either case, all of these just simply go into another division of the New World Order. And Obama will continue his participation with the UN. All right. And then, of course, we got Hillary. Clone number 7, I think, is the one who showed up. It's hard to tell unless you get a close-up. But in either case, along with the Bushes themselves, you know, when you take the family portrait and you remove the cloaking, it's a sight to behold. You've got basically Beelzebub and all the demons and all the fallen angels and all the reptilians scratching each other's back. They're all part of that same bloodline, that same seed, that we can go all the way back to Nimrod. We can go all the way back to the garden. We can go back to the Nephilim. Now, when I say that the Nephilim or the Nephilim, we see in Genesis 6 that there was corruption before and after the flood. And in either case, those that are of this bloodline are an abomination. And that means that when they die, then what I'm thinking and what I'm saying is they then become a disembodied spirit and an or evil spirit, and or their essence transfers on to something else. In either case, in either situation, this is the understanding of how Lucifer and all the others. Now, the focus has always been on Lucifer changing the name to Satan, but in reality, it's all the fallen angels we have to keep an eye on. That's part of the deception, part of the sleight of hand. And now that these are in office, now that they're in place and going to the next level, because they are, then let's keep an eye out for what's going on. So again, if you're new to the Tinfoil Hat Club, I'm Scott Hensler. I have been in the ministry of deliverance, some know it as exorcisms, for 17 years now. That means that I deal with the devil every day. I deal with demons. I deal with curses. I deal with casting them out of people. I deal with praying. And now we have a new kid in town, and it's called Psychotronics. Now, this technology has been around for a while, but as I go through tonight with, King David's harp, the chords, the secret chords, some of you know the Hallelujah song. The point of it is that there are frequencies, resonances, and vibrations that are very crucial, very critical to our world. And dark matter, otherwise spirits, evil spirits, those things that can use frequencies such as Sasquatches, when they yodel out, I believe what they're doing is they're opening dimensions and able to slip back into it, and that's why when you go looking for them, you can't find them. But in either case, this is no time to be accepting anything on the market out there that's trying to give the indication that it's going to ease your pain, like King David's harp with Saul. All right? And as I explain this, I want you to understand that technology has specifications. Engineering has tolerances. And any time that you have devices that do not meet the tolerances, the specifications, you can have failure, you can have harmonics, you can have spurious radiation, you can have channel interference, you can have all kinds of things that the Federal Communication tries to monitor under Part 15. And you'll find that these devices out here, whether they say they do or not, that whether it's hysteresis, meaning that in itself, in its temperature change, that it can alter and change frequency, whether you knocked it off the table by accident one night, you set it back on, and now it's detuned, whatever the situation is, we have to be concerned about frequencies that are not here for our benefit. Otherwise, there are resonance, there are frequencies that are very harmful to us. And since the demonic world, the occult, that there are particular resonances, there are particular frequencies, just as the Sasquatch can open and close the veil. And so, along with the Schumann resonance, we've talked about that before, that's the natural ring of the planet, the harmonic or the first stage resonance, meaning the fundamental frequency in itself. that whenever you adjust upward towards 8 hertz from 7.83 or whatever they've determined, that then you can get into a situation where your body then is out of resonance, and there can be damage that can be done to organs, to the mind. You go into another resonance, then you start dealing with dark matter of opening up those veils. And so it's very, very crucial for you to understand that any device out there that you think you're going to buy, you need to think about it twice, because after I'm done talking about this, I think you understand. Now, before I go any further, the Wednesday show, I don't know why the first 55 minutes, not that you missed anything, but for some reason it didn't engaged. So you need to go to about 55 minutes in for the show. So I'm going to make sure that in the future that whatever I do here with this software, it's not going to do that again. Still a little learning curve. It's a complete opposite of the software that's used for Blog Talk versus MIXLR. I wanted to mention, too, when I was talking about Julia Thompson and the show and the examples as to why we may be infected, why we may have curses. I was certainly, if there was any thought that I was implying that she was in error, please understand I did not mean that at all. She has walked the straight and narrow, and she is victimized. She is truly a TI. So if you got that, I apologize. I did not mean that at all. There are, if anyone would have a problem, would be me per my behavior years ago. I was quite the stinker. And with that in hand, I'm surprised I don't have a third arm growing out of my head the way I used to act. But, as we learn and we go to the woodshed and we're disciplined and we're consecrated, we get rid of the old man. And so I want to make the statement that Julia has done a very good job in walking with the Lord, and I certainly did not mean anything if that's the way it was taken. All right? All right, with that, again, I want to thank everyone for supporting this ministry. Now, I call it a ministry, but in reality, I'm just simply trying to do what I can because I don't follow the mainstream church. I don't connect with them at all. I've tried. That's why I call it network. Now, well, that didn't work so well. And then you have to ask yourself, well, why? If I'm doing those things that have been commanded to do, then why is there such a rejection of the church? Well, I've been certainly scrutinized and ran over the coals over the years. So how about we take a second look at the so-called church? And let's take a look as to why they are not doing what has been called to do per Matthew 28, Great Commission. So for those who do support me, thank you, because there's a lot of people now who are set free. Now, I got sick here last week and still trying to recover a little bit, still not 100%. I tried to do some calls yesterday, got some calls, didn't connect with everyone. I'll pick up where I left off on Saturday. And so if you haven't heard from me, I'll call you again, or if you saw that I called and you couldn't answer, we'll try it again. But either ways, I'll do what I can to help you out. So I'm getting stronger, getting ready to move forward with full strength. And again, for those who support me, this enables me to be able to pray for people. Now, I have mentioned that because of the quantity of people, that I need to be a little more stringent to make sure the quality of the people that I'm dealing with, because there are those who really do not wish to recover. And what I mean is that they're tormented under circumstances. They really just want to get up and running again so they can continue as business as usual. I'm not in the business of that. There needs to be a change in your heart. There needs to be a change in your spirit. There needs to be a transformation from who you were to who God intended you to be. And that's what I'm trying to do, is get you into that mode. So if you think I'm just here to fix you so you can go back to being a bad boy or a crazy girl, it's not going to happen. Unfortunately, that has been some of the cases over the years. And so I need to focus a little stronger with the time at hand, because time is short. My time is I can't do this 24 hours a day like I used to. And so I need to be a little more direct on that. Now, also mentioning, too, that on January 30th for David Carrero, that the FOJC radio I've been asked to be on, and so I'm looking forward to that. Main subjects of psychotronics, gang stalking, TIs, and the demonic relation. And I think that'll be a very good show. He seems to be on the up and up, and just the time that I've talked to him, I believe he's got a heart of God. And so I'm looking forward to this. It's good to be in fellowship with those who are in agreement, especially in one who deals with satanic ritual abuse. That's a major, major hard subject. Of course, I deal with it. I don't know if I do in the quantities he does. You can't help but deal with it whenever you're doing deliverance because there's just so many out there. But anyone who's willing to tackle that is, as far as I'm concerned, is a good man. So I'm glad that I'll be on there. All right. King David, before being a servant of King Saul, was playing harps and doing all kinds of things that showed to God that he was actually a man after God's own heart, and of course becoming King David eventually. But he was also known for the secret chord, or the ability to play the lyre, which is also known as a harp. Now, if you look at some of the pictures, some have several strings, more than 7, some have less. My understanding, there were 7 basic chords. But in either case, there was a certain tone or resonance, a certain frequency that would be produced by strumming such a device. And King David, in his anointing, because he certainly was one that was had the mantle, that when he played this, the demons, the evil spirits that were sent to him by God, per 1 Samuel 16:23 in the King James. Now, you'll read a little differently in some of the other translations, but so I default back to the King James, and it clearly tells us that these were from God, the evil spirits. And so I'm not here to talk about what that was all about. The speculation, in my opinion, is because he was not following the course that God had set him out to. When we look at the book of Enoch, we look at Jubilees, we see that the evil spirits, 10% of them were allowed to roam the earth. So those who were disobedient, those who were, quote, rebellious, then would have to deal with such things for the rebellion against God. So I think that in itself defaults back on 1 Samuel 16:23, that's probably the case, but that's not the subject matter of what I want to discuss here, but that's my opinion. In either case, the fact that David, when he would play, the evil spirits would leave him. It doesn't say that they pulled back or they let go. It literally said they left him. So God then allowed David to be a deliverance minister for Saul. Now, the fact that they would return tells me then that Saul then just never learned, eventually tried to kill King David, that there's a lesson to be learned here, that if you are not delivered and you do not repent and you do not return to what God has intended, the demons will not go away no matter who prays for you. So I think it's a prime example. If anything comes out of that, I think that is what I'd want you to know. All right? So again, King David, being the man after God's own heart, allowed David's anointing to deliver Saul for a time. So again, it's hard to understand totally what's going on because it was just a short line there. But again, my focus is on the musical notes or the frequencies or the resonance of the lyre or the harp and their connection with evil spirits for good or bad. Because as I mentioned a little earlier, that in the resonance, there can be resonance frequencies that are good. Now, when I say resonance, then what we're talking about, that is the center point of a, quote, frequency. Now, you can have a bandwidth of frequency, you can have distortion, you can have spurious, you can have harmonics. And what this means is that anything other than the main frequency then there can be what we would refer to as distortion, especially with stereos. You may remember when stereos first came out. I talked about Memorex tape the other day. Anytime that you duplicate, record a frequency, and you replicate it, you duplicate it, that whenever there is other things added to it, other than the fundamental frequency, so let's say you have a frequency of 100 hertz, okay? But because of the replication, because of the tape, because of the digital, because of the noise that's within the needle on the record, the speakers not being quite up, there'll be other frequencies that are introduced. There may be a fracturing of the frequency, otherwise it's not allowed to go from point A to point B in its range, and so it constitutes distortion. Now, in that distortion, again, you can have spurious, meaning that there can be an offshoot, that it is no relation to the fundamental frequency, it's another frequency in itself, or you can have harmonics, meaning that it can be a subharmonic, which means half the frequency, or you can have a harmonic in itself, which is a doubling of the frequency or tripling. So you can have the second harmonic, the third harmonic. But in either case, it's not the fundamental. And so you can then interfere with electronic devices that are not in the original band. So let's say that I have a transmitter that transmits at 100 megahertz. And because of the filtering, because of the oscillator in itself is not stable, it's influenced by temperature. Right now, it's amazing in North Idaho that car computers and the stereos in the cars work as well as they do because, we've had zero temperatures. Then we had a swing back up to 40 degrees. Well, that's quite a temperature range to influence electronic devices. So their stability or their performance alters and changes. It's a hysteresis. It's very common. So the challenge in technology over the years, especially from World War II, from crystal radios versus variable frequency adjustments, means to hold the stability, to hold the resonance down, to hold the harmonics down, to hold spurious down, to eliminate any channel interference. When you buy a radio, you'll see that it complies to Part 15. When you get a computer, you'll see that it complies to Part 15 of the Federal Communication. Well, what it means that in its operating range, because a microprocessor is also an oscillator, is also a type of transmitter because it's because of its oscillation, its on and off effect, that it can interfere with other equipment. And so they've set stringent laws in place for the specifications in its tolerance of manufacturing to lower the possibility of interference. Now, me as a ham radio operator, I have to be concerned that when I transmit, that I'm not bothering TV, I'm not bothering the neighbor next door on their radio, and so forth. And so I have filters and I have things that keep me from interfering with them. And if there's so much problem, then maybe I have to actually purchase equipment that I have to install on their TV and their radios. Now, that's extreme, but it has happened in the past. And so my point in this example is that the equipment that you're buying to relieve the psychotronics, to relieve the brain pain, the mind control, these things do not necessarily meet Federal Communication standards. They're Chinese junk. Some guy in a garage threw it together. So the point of it is whenever you have a receiver, then you have a process called heterodyning. And in its heterodyning, you actually have a oscillator. So you're generating a frequency that's actually transmitting out. And that tolerance of that frequency may not be very stable. Now there's phase lock loop, crystal controlled, and now we have software driven radios. Okay? But the point of it is, who put it together? What components are they using? Do they meet military spec? When you buy a good radio, like if you're a ham radio operator and you buy a nice mobile, you'll see that it's mil spec. Well, what it means is all temperature ranges and vibration and dropping and moisture, it doesn't affect it. Well, if you buy something that is third rate, you buy something that wasn't quite engineered to have your best interest, they're just simply trying to make a buck. Because here's the way the Chinese work. And I know this for a fact because I used to have to deal with the engineering of them, that in their philosophy, they will produce as many components as possible, as cheaply as possible, knowing full well that there'll be a return of the product because there will be a failure. But in their thinking, they're not thinking to give you a product that won't fail. They're looking at the bottom dollar, that they'll try and keep the minimal returns as low as possible. Do you see the difference there? Where we want quality. We want it, when we turn it on, when we use it to whatever we're going to do, we want it to work. Well, they don't see it that way. So a lot of the components, a lot of the sub-assemblies that go into these devices, and these devices, again, are to try and curve the psychotronics, try to curve the voice-to-skull technology, trying to curve the radiation that's being sent at you, the microwave, to try and stop all of this. Well, in and itself, could it be harmful if operated outside of its perimeter? That's my point in this whole teaching tonight. So let me make an example as I go through the notes here, okay? That there's also an attempt right now that the fundamental chords of David's harp, the lyre, that there's a change, a movement to try and take those fundamental frequencies. Otherwise, when you play a song, now I'm not a musician, but you have a note that what chord do you play in? You know, if you play a song, what chord do you start out in? What are you basing it to? What's your tempo? What's your time, right? Well, they want to alter and they want to change the original. Now, I need you to understand that with their calculations of making the adjustments, otherwise playing a different chord, meaning that the praise and worship teams of the church now want to mimic this new chord, this new frequency, this new resonance. And I need to warn you that, well, one, if David was doing it, he was anointed, and now all of a sudden man wants to change it, then I'll have to assume that what you're doing is opposing God's original fundamental frequency. Now, as I researched and looked into this, that because of the potential of the stars and the moons and their alignment and what they think that they're trying to use a factor, the factor comes out to 72. Now, what's interesting is the factor of King David's chords was 70. 70 is a biblical number. So the 70 went out among to preach the gospel, to cast out demons. But yet now we have 72, which is what the basis of this new chord is, a demonic number. We have 72 iridium systems. We have 72 harp systems. Well, does the red flag not come up? So now we have churches all over the country have now gone to this new note, this new resonance, this new frequency, based on the occult, based on demonic numbers. What's wrong with this? Does this surprise you? Doesn't surprise me. When I looked into it and found it out, it immediately jumped out at me. I knew what they were doing. Because again, whenever you alter and change your frequency, you potentially go into another band, another grouping of your mind. What is soothing to the soul? How does the mind take in the music? You can have audio noise that is offensive. You can be put on edge, like fingers on a chalkboard, or you can have soothing music that puts you to sleep. Do you understand? So again, now we have resonances that, in my opinion, are based on a demonic number, and I'm warning you that, again, as I did a show about psychotronics in the churches, the voice-to-skull technology, that there is a resonance being transmitted within many churches. And how do we know this? Because the mixing board, the sound board, where the individual normally would sit in the back of the sanctuary and where he could hear the choir, where he could hear the band, where he could hear the music, and they would make the adjustments necessary so it blended nicely in, for everybody. Now they're in a closed room. Well, that doesn't make any sense. How can you achieve what was the original intent by being now isolated from the harmony, the resonance of the sanctuary? Well, what they're doing is that these rooms are soundproofed. They're shielded. They're in a Faraday cage. And so what's happening is the transmission that's coming from the pulpit is not affecting the men who are operating the equipment. So what's happening is it's giving a euphoric feeling to the people in the congregation, and the devices are low-powered. So what it means is the closer you are to the pulpit, the closer you are to the pastor, the more that you are affected by this, giving you a false Holy Spirit, giving you a false euphoria, then literally in your mind you're thinking the closer you are to the pastor, the closer you are to God. Do you understand what is going on here? And I did a case study and verified that all through this country, that many of those soundboards and the sanctuaries, all of these churches all across the country are now being enclosed. And that was my voice to skull technology video that I did. If you go to Tinfoil Hat Club and go to on the right-hand side as you go down on the home page, you'll see the media button. It's in black and white. It'll immediately take you to the media page, and you'll see the voice to skull technology being used in the church. So I want you to understand that everything that's being implemented is not for your benefit, is not bringing you closer to God. Then in reality, it's nothing more than, again, of the New World Order, along with double-duty cell towers, along with the satellites, along with all of the technology of mind control, that, again, we're duped, we're deceived, all right? So I use caution. It's my opinion. It needs to be exercised that when you're, worshiping, are you in a church that is using this technology? One way to find out is the sound room, is it encased, is it enclosed, all right? So that's my point on that. Case in point. Now, I want you to understand that many of the people that I deliver that have received demons, many of them have received demons from the church. The influences on the body and the mind, per the frequencies and per the open doors and curses that you have, that those two combined together can really cause havoc on you, okay? King David's chords chased away demons, so why is the fundamental frequencies and those things that are in the churches being changed? Jesus isn't even being brought up. Do you understand? So everything is being an attempt to actually infect you and keep you in bondage with this particular situation, not to set you free. All right? Those chords designed by God with biblical factors, otherwise a factor of 70, are now resonating in a demonic factor of 72. All right? So again, this is not the will of God. So please be very careful. All right. So people not having deliverance are lacking discernment as well, because they've got demons that influence them. People without deliverance still have curses and demons. So now the subject of frequencies that would be stimulating and or bringing you closer to God are now part of the torment. All right. And I know this for a fact because I have now dealt with many people that have bought some of these oscillators to bring home, otherwise as Schumann resonant frequency oscillators. And what they have done is they've literally, for weeks at a time, and I'm not joking, I'm very serious here. I know an individual that at weeks at a time was literally hauled into the spirit realm. And the demons, just like people would think that the UFO and the Greys came and took you away, the demons would either come and torment them and even sexually assault them. or take them into the spirit realm like astral projecting. Again, a lot of people would think that they were being abducted by aliens. The whole time, this oscillator is sitting there keeping the veil open. Do you understand? So please, please be very careful of these devices. And it wasn't until they finally turned these things off. Now, let me give you an example. I bought a device, 25 years ago, that was a white noise generator. And it had options. It had waterfall, had white noise, had summer rain, and then it had one that was like a railroad or trains on a train track. And it actually duplicated that thump, 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 thump. Well, before I had been through Deliverance, I literally, trying to use this because I was working nights and trying to sleep through the day, that had happened. It was a type of hypnosis, and I literally was taken into a realm that I fought for hours to come out of. It was horrifying. And I threw that thing away and never used it again, and that was 25-something years ago. And that was my personal experience in that. Okay? So I want you to do your own research. I encourage you to do that about these devices. Okay? Again, me personally knowing people and having to pray for people and deliver from that, getting them to finally stop using these devices. We need to understand, too, that with the spiritual demonic doors that are opened up, that in this visitation, that in like astral projecting, when you are doing necromancy, when you're doing clairvoyance, when you're doing divination and witchcraft, you're literally doing things that are against God's will. And so you give legal rights to the demons then to stay and have you, just like you do hard drugs. Same thing. It literally is a type of hypnosis. All right? So being tormented and being assaulted, that I'm afraid that a lot of you that are TI'd, as I mentioned before, with synthetic demons being electronic means generated, which again is part of this situation, but then also you have real demons because you haven't been delivered and you haven't had the curses broke off, all right? So understand when it comes to the Schumann resonance, there is a very fine line between 7.83 hertz versus 8 hertz, all right? In that range is a very deadly range, all right? That in this, the organs can literally turn to mush. Case in point, several years ago, there was an air conditioner that was installed in an apartment complex, and it turns out that after the investigation and they looked at the nameplate, it literally said something to the effect of Principality of the Air Corporation, which there was no such thing. No one knows who installed this. No one knows who called to have it put in. But the bearing in the fan, as the main fan that brought air to all the apartments, there was a machining error in it, and it would literally resonate that 8 hertz frequency range. And what took place was people literally died. Their insides turned to mush. People went insane. People jumped out of windows. People murdered each other. This is a documented record fact. It might have been Chicago. But in either case, this did take place. Now, here's what's interesting. When they went to investigate to duplicate this, the laboratory that was given in charge of this, one of the techs was working late. The one tech that was setting up the equipment turned it on. Now, you got to remember, that's outside your audio hearing, so you don't hear it. So he turned it on, basically went home, not thinking that the tech who was working in there would be subject to it, not even relating that when they came in the next morning, they literally found the technician who stayed late in such bad shape that he eventually died. He was basically ready for the loony bin. His insides had been damaged. So I want you to understand, again, that these devices that are out there that are supposed to benefit you, that whoever assembles them, whoever manufactures them, whoever sells them may not know what they're doing. And they may not meet the mil-spec, the military standards. They may not meet FCC compliance, that when you operate them in a cold room or you accidentally knock it off the table or it ages and the components break down, that it then no longer holds the original frequency and could virtually tune into these very dangerous bands. Do you understand? And that you right out of the box. Who knows? I mean, they could be that way. And or who's making these things anyways? You don't think that the New World Order doesn't know about these things? Now all of a sudden they're on every internet website. You can buy them left and right. They come in all different varieties, all different shapes, all different sizes, all different powers to do this, to do that. Well, let's just be very cautious about this, because whenever you had people who were ill in the old days, did we not have snake oil salesmen? Did we not have carpetbaggers? Did we not have people who tried to sell elixirs to the sick, to the dying? Well, again, these people are opportunists. They see a dime to be made off the pain and suffering of those who were TI'd, those who were gang-stalked. And then in reality, they may actually be these people who are giving you devices that in the flick of a switch, they may give you relief, they may give you the appearance, they may be a placebo. But in either case, the fact that they could potentially be in control of it, then at a moment's notice, could turn that machine that's now giving you the secret chords of David relief, now turn into your worst nightmare. Do you understand? Same thing with cell phones, same thing with cell towers, same thing with Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi in itself, I'm determining now, is one of the biggest offenders of the pain and suffering that those who are electronically sensitive, same thing with smart meters, that if you're getting ringing in your ears, you're getting noise in your head, you're getting headaches, you're hearing voices, that Wi-Fi, you need to understand, Wi-Fi in itself is connected directly to the internet. The IF, or the IP address, is basically like a freeway, a two-way, comes and goes, that it is literally under the control of those who are able to manipulate and hack, that all Wi-Fi devices can be hacked. They come from a manufacturer. They come with the ability inside as back doors that they can be used as necessary. So that's why in my office, I have chosen to go everything that's hardwired. Now, I've turned off the Wi-Fi on my router. If I do have someone who does need it, I can always turn it on. But it is not on all the time. I don't want it blasting into my head with them doing this. Now, the other thing I've mentioned too, that the SWAT teams now have devices that look like a tablet, and probably a tablet could be used with a simple device that plugs into the USB, that since the fundamental frequencies of Wi-Fi are like 2.4 and 5 gigahertz, that it is virtually like a Doppler radar, and that the signal that's flooding in your room, that when a SWAT team comes up to your door, they simply look at the tablet, which is a receiver of that frequency, that the propagation alteration that occurs because of your body being in the way of the microwave can transfer to their tablet, and they literally, like looking at a video screen, know how many are in the room, know where you are you sitting at the desk, are you sleeping in bed, are you standing up, are you laying down, are you sitting on the couch, whatever the circumstances, before they break in through that door, they know exactly where you are because of your Wi-Fi. Do you understand? All this technology that we have is being used by the opposition to be one of the instruments to be used against us. All right? So the apartment complex I was mentioning about where that bearing was bad and those people, that is documented, that is fact, and has been presented on some of these stranger than fiction programs. And since it is a public circumstance of death, that it is a public document. All right? So again, any device that oscillates like a transmitter that is operating within a tolerance can be altered and changed by temperature, component failure, damage to the oscillator like knocking it off the table, and could cause the fundamental frequency to shift, going from something that may bring relief that may be in harmony with your body, with your spirit, with your soul, to now in opposition. It can become wide-banded. Otherwise, instead of being tight to one frequency, it now may have several frequencies that are devastating to you. And it may be by design. Again, generating spurious, as I mentioned, that's a frequency that is not part of the original fundamental. And then those things that are of harmonics. In either case, please be very careful. These snake oil salesmen that are selling these things wish to only make $1 and or set devices within a home of those people seeking refuge that they then have basically put them in chains and bondage without them even knowing it, okay? While all the time you think that you have demons, just like the individual that bought one of these devices, it was opening up the veil. The demons would come for weeks at a time, that once they were held in this bondage, they literally thought it was nothing but demons. But in reality, it was demons using electronic means. And so as I've been pointing out, that again, as demons being opportunists, that they're using today's technology. And literally, it is the fallen angel technology. And so that's how the end times is being implemented. Okay? Because like I said, I did that show on the voice to skull technology for the church. You'll see that on the playlist for YouTube, but you could access it quicker if you go to 1012 Hack Club and go to the media tab, which you'll find in the lower right. And it'll be one of the main videos at the top. And I recommend that you do go to it because I took some time to demonstrate that, and you'll have a better explanation. If your church is doing such a thing, there's another compliant or another reason to understand that they're not here as a representation of God, all right, that they're here to keep us in bondage. And if you've got any questions about devices, you know, a lot of you have already purchased some of these things. A lot of you have already spent a lot of money. They may have worked in the beginning and then they stopped. Well, again, a lot of this can be a placebo. You're looking for relief and you're willing to do whatever it takes. And I get that because I'm TI'd too. I'm dealing with that, but I know better. I know that, see, being around what I used to do, the radio transmitters, the service engineering, I was a troubleshooter. And so what I would do is I would come into, you know, a plant, a facility, and try and determine what's wrong. Well, what I would find is the device itself may be functioning, but it was running with a problem, meaning that in and itself, though it gave the appearance of running correctly, it did not. And so it in itself was the issue. And once it was changed out, once it was repaired, then everything went back to normal. All right. So again, just be aware that this new type of snake oil salesman is targeted individuals. You're targeted. Bad stuff. Very bad stuff. All right. Now, again, with King David's harp, all the way through to today, DARPA, and of course the HARP project, that there is technology referred to as Project Silent Talk. Now what that means is that soldiers can communicate with a synthetic telepathy. Telepathy in itself, again, we need to remember that there can be a demonic influence in the first place. So when we say synthetic, then we're talking about through electronic means, that the soldiers in their thought processes can literally talk to each other. Now, that doesn't mean one-to-one. That doesn't mean that the thought goes right into the soldier. There needs to be an interpretation, okay? All right, so the electroencephalogram can also be one done by the magnetic encephalogram, meaning that then there's no longer electrical wires, but what they're working on, DARPA, is an actual chip that's in the brain, that then it takes the analog signal from the mind, converts it to digital, so we have an analog converter, A to D converter, which I'm very familiar with. I've dealt with that a lot. And then it goes into a microprocessor then for the processing to decode and then to re-encode it back over to the other soldier. And so your thoughts then are then kind of like dial-up. You hear the, boop, 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 and it's translated over. Then as it's sent over to the other soldier, it's brought back into thoughts. So what it means is that you have two soldiers that unless there's a language translator in there, that the one, let's say he's Hispanic, that if he thinks in Hispanic, then the soldier is going to receive it in Spanish. And he's not, if he's English and doesn't speak Spanish, he's not going to be able to interpret it. But what this means, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to listen to this. With translations, with interpreting software, that means you could literally take soldiers, let's say mercenaries, Russia, China, Japan, wherever, Soviet Union, and literally put them under the guidance of one individual, even though they cannot communicate through audio words because they don't speak the same language, but because of Project Silent Talk, the synthetic telepathy, with the interpretation, being able to translate one language over to another, they literally can all talk to each other. So if you've wondered how the blue helmets are going to be able to function with each other at the last minute notice, that is how it's going to be done. Now you need to understand that the Vietnam vets, referred to as tunnel rats, that were part of the CIA experiments for the voice-to-skull technology. So as they sent the soldier down into the Viet Cong tunnel, which in itself must have been horrifying, that the guys up above could communicate with him. Okay, so that literally meant that there was brain implants done in the 60s and 70s. And then when we look at this technology, it actually goes back as far as the 1950s, coming to full term in 1973, but also with this using LSD and hypnosis and all sorts of other devices to do this. Now, those that were tunnel rats, many of them, unfortunately, were not released. Once the war was over, which was never really a war, that they continued this project, and so a lot of these soldiers were tormented beyond belief. Now, it didn't mean they did it to all of them. Just simply going into that tunnel in itself was traumatizing. You know, again, post-traumatic stress. But now you go home and you're still hearing voices. You're still hearing the God complex. You're still hearing demons, that in reality, the CIA continued this project on these poor men. How horrifying it is. And again, it just shows you the depravity of those of the CIA and the Pentagon. All right? So again, with the electroencephalogram, meaning the wires were attached to the electromagnetic encephalogram to remote neural monitoring. Again, with the double-duty cell towers, you don't need two cell towers anymore because now we have the iridium system beaming microwave down onto everybody. Carrier that's produced from that, then only one cell tower is used, plus there's public service broadcasting and all the others. So again, from David's harp to mind control, torture, pain compliant, come Lord Jesus, come. We're done. We've had enough of this. Now, the only way they're going to stop is through exposing them. Now, that means we don't give up. That means we don't stop. That means that those who do such things, that we need to hold them accountable. Now, God is going to hold them accountable. But we, as people, as citizens, we who are here for a purpose, and we all are, there's a reason for it. There's no mistake that you were born in these last days. And we've got a job to do, to expose evil, to shout their sins from the rooftops. And the only way we can do it is to stand together. By making us sick, by putting us under mind control, by doing those things to us that cause illness, sicknesses, division, to literally think that we're going crazy, and then also to classify us as that with the DSM-5, that being placed on medications and even stronger mind control, meaning that they turn the dial up. And unfortunately, the past 2 days for me have been a real pressure cooker. But in either case, I'm not going to give up. How am I going to stop? What good is it going to do anyways? And so I'm going to continue. I've been behind a little bit because of it. But, you know, After 17 years of kicking demons' rear ends, of casting them out, of demonstrating the power and authority that has been given to me through the blood of Christ, with Christ who is in me, then if God is for me, then who can be against me? And that means that with the power, with the dunamis, and the ability to stand against the wiles of the enemy in all forms, including electronic means, that as God pours out his power, as he moves mightily amongst us, as he brings us into that realm that we've been intended for these last days, then let's show ourselves approved. Let's get delivered. Let's get free. Let's get ready for the fight, all right? Because if you're sick, if you're weak, if you're wounded, if you're mentally ill, if you're incapable, then that's not going to be any benefit to those who need you, right? So as we move forth, let's do what we've been called to do, all right? All right, again, as I go through this, I want you to understand that, again, deception is the name of the game. I hope that Trump coming into office and the fact that he made it this far, that we have the opposition is going to be even stronger. Now, again, I don't support Trump. He's just another puppet. It's just another game. But the point of it is that, again, they will use this division. They'll do the left-right. They'll do the good cop, bad cop, as they've always done before. Remember when the Bushes were in office, how you had Hollywood and always throwing fits and boycotting and this and that and making threats to leave the country. Well, that's going to continue. And it's nothing more than division. It's nothing more than causing an uproar. It's nothing more than false flag. So don't be a part of it. Don't fall into it. Okay, just understand that that with that knowledge that you now have, that myself and others that are bringing to you about this technology, that you know things that the general community does not. Okay, so you should be one step ahead of them. You should be able, for your cognitive, be able to rationally discern the situation in front of you. Not react, not overreact, not lash out. Be still and know that he is God. All right? That's what you're called to do. And in your ability to come together and stay in prayer, to stand in Ephesians 6, this is where God is going to make his move in you, because he's not going to use those that have turned their back on him. All right? Now, there's going to be some that will be kind of allowed to be pushed around. Maybe some of you have already experienced that. And then you finally wake up and say, you know what, I've had enough. I hate you, Satan. I hate you, demons. I'm not going to tolerate you anymore. How dare you do this? Because you need to remember again, ladies and gentlemen, that once you're out of the way, they're going after your kids. They're going after your grandkids. That's been the plan all along. Well, that doesn't work for me. All right? And it should not work for you. So whatever is going to happen with Trump here, this is going to be one heck of a ride. So get ready for that e-ticket ride. Let me tell you, it's only begun. And boy, I don't know. Every time I read something, whenever you see opposition like that, you know that it's orchestrated. All right? So again, don't be a part of it. Pull yourself back and just assess it from a distance. Use your wisdom. Use your discernment. Use the knowledge that's been given to you, especially if you've been delivered. All right? Come to that understanding that too much is given, much is expected. Please understand that there are people who need you. And I need you. You know, I'm tired of being alone in this. I'm tired of limping along and crawling on the floor and then having good days, and I get my spirit back up, and then I charge again, and then I get beat up again. That gets old. Well, the only way that we're going to stop this is being together, corporately praying. So what I want to do is, as I've mentioned before, is to probably take a night a week, and that is all that we will do. Now, I've got Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays for the regular show. So I got Tuesdays and Thursdays. Whether it's a Saturday night, whatever I come up with, that is what we need to do. And in this standing together, then we release God's power. We release God's angels. We take a stand and we say no. Because as I speak into the spirit realm. And as a senior, as an elder, with the mantle, with the power, with the authority, with the blessings of God, in the obedience of moving forward, then you will see the power work. And once you see the power work, there's hope. Okay, because many of you have lost hope. All right. Again, God bless you guys for hanging in there. I know that it's a tough world, so we will prevail. God bless.
You're listening to the all-new KBLU Radio Network. That's the Blue Raven Network. Often duplicated, but never replicated. You're listening to the all-new KBLU Radio Network. That's the Blue Raven Network.
Often duplicated, never replicated. You're listening to the all-new KBLU Radio Network, Blue Raven Network.